Okay, this is compound and complex homework. We're going to look for our clauses, and then we're going to decide if each sentence is compound, complex, or compound, complex. So something to keep in mind are your sentence formulas. Remember, a compound sentence is an independent plus an independent. A complex sentence is an independent plus a dependent. And then a compound complex is the big mama. It's going to have two independents and at least one dependent. Okay, let's see what we have. Number 1, John shook the bottle well, but he didn't spill the juice. Here, very important, the first thing I see is a comma, fanboy. So that tells me that this is either going to be compound or it's going to be compound complex. Both of those have that. Let's see what other clauses I have. John shook the bottle well is an independent clause. He didn't spill the juice is another independent clause. So two independents is a compound sentence. Number 2, the message was hard to understand, so I was unable to complete the task that he asked me to. The first thing I see is a comma fanboy, so I know it's either compound or compound complex. And as I'm looking through the sentence, I also see this dependent signal word, that. That he asked me to is a dependent clause. So I have a dependent clause and I have a comma fanboy. The comma fanboy is joining together two independent clauses. So this is an independent plus a dependent. So this is compound complex. Number 3, the garden flourished while the sunflowers and hollyhocks towered above the marigolds and shorter flowers. Here, as I'm looking at this sentence, I have an and, a fanboy, but it's not joining together two clauses because shorter flowers is not a clause. So, I have an and here, but I don't have a comma in front of it, so let's just keep looking. Here I have while, it's a dependent clause signal word. The dependent clause here is while the sunflowers and hollyhocks towered above the marigolds and shorter flowers. That's one dependent clause. Kind of big, but it's a dependent clause. My independent clause here is the garden flourished. So an independent plus a dependent is simply a complex sentence. Number 4, at the end of the concert, audience members jumped to their feet and enthusiastic applause broke out. At first glance, at the end of the concert may look like a dependent clause to you, but it's not because it's missing a verb. It's not a clause. This is just two prepositional phrases put together. So as I look, I have comma and fanboy. So let's see what it's joining together. At the end of the concert, audience members jumped to their feet is an independent clause. Enthusiastic applause broke out is an independent clause. Independent plus independent is compound. Number 5, as temperatures dropped close to freezing, many orange trees were threatened. Here, I have a dependent clause signal word. This first part of the sentence is a dependent clause. Many orange trees were threatened is an independent clause. So a dependent plus an independent is a complex sentence. Number 6, the guide who escorted our group spoke many languages, so we had no problems. Here I have comma, so. It's joining together two clauses, or joining together clauses. I don't know what kind of clauses yet. Let me look through it. I also see this dependent signal word who. The dependent clause here is who escorted our group. And that dependent clause has come down and divided this independent clause in half. The guide spoke many languages is one independent clause. We had no problems is another independent clause. So this sentence has an independent, a dependent, and an independent. So it's the big mama, it's the compound complex sentence. Number 7, many people claimed that they had seen ghosts in the windows and others believed them. Here I have a comma fanboy, so I know I have either a compound sentence or a compound complex sentence. I also see a dependent clause signal word, that they had seen ghosts in the windows is my dependent clause. My independent clause is many people claimed. My other independent clause is others believed them. So two independents and a dependent makes this compound complex. Number 8, each night as the clock strikes midnight, a strong wind blows the front door open. Or can you explain that opening in another way? As the clock strikes midnight, as is a dependent signal word. Here I have a subject, I have a verb. This is a clause, dependent clause. An independent clause here is each night. A strong wind blows the front door open. I have comma or, and then I have another independent clause. Can you explain its opening in another way? So two independents plus a dependent makes number 8, compound complex.